We've got the first issue of Rorschach by Tom King, Jorge Fornes, Dave Stewart. And how does it do? Is it the spiritual successor to Watchmen? Is it Watchmen 2? What is it? Well, let's get into that. Hey everybody, this is Perch, doing a review here of DC Black Label Rorschach. This is issue number 1. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers in here, so if you haven't read it yet and you intend to, tune out. It always drives me nuts when there's somebody in the comments like, "Hey, you should say spoilers next time." It's like, well, I'm doing a review of a comic. What do you think? Like I guess some people are able to do reviews without spoiling anything in the comic, but those seem like pretty hollow reviews to me. At any rate, before I get into this issue, so yesterday I did the video. It's interesting to see the responses I got about, do comic fans, does the market really want commentary on current events? And what's interesting about that, it kind of bears more talking, and I'm not going to go into it heavily here because this is a review about this issue. But it's interesting how people's minds kind of immediately went to some social topics or politics, etc. The same old arguments came up. Comics have always been political, etc. But what I was really hitting on, and I said so in the video, is that it's this desire to kind of hit on I don't know, almost like silly tropes or small things like, Twitter is a dumpster fire of a place. And then that gets inserted into like Fantastic Four and a bunch of other comics over and over and over again. And it's like, do we want that? Does that matter? I'm not talking about, commentary on big kind of social issues. I'm talking about commentary on like dumb social issues. That's at any rate, this all got kicked off because Tom King in some interviews has said that Rorschach is going to be heavily political, and it's going to really touch on a lot of things that we're experiencing today. And kind of the interview kind of hints at fake news and manipulation and polarization and kind of all that stuff. So the question becomes, does Rorschach give us that? And the answer largely is no. Rorschach is a political book in the sense that the backdrop is political. The backdrop is happening during a campaign, but this is at its heart a detective story. This is a mystery. There's really it's as simple as that. This is a mystery story, and it's very much at this stage in the game. I know it's worth mentioning that in Tom King's series, Mr. Miracle, and even to some extent The Vision and some of these others, they don't necessarily they don't end where they began. In that, let's see, the best way to describe it is Tom King has a style that you definitely pick up on if you read a bunch of his series that seems to play out the same in a lot of his books. If you look at Vision, if you look at Strange Adventures, even how it's progressing, Mr. Miracle, even Heroes in Crisis, there's a tone that kind of by about the 1/3 in midpoint starts to seep in, and then it just is the same way through the rest of the comic. And I think that's been something I've knocked Tom King for, because it gets to feel like if you've read one Tom King book, you've read them all. If you like that style, great, but you are kind of playing the same tunes over and over again. This book starts out different from what he's done in the past. Tom King has made comments to the effect of he knows he's fallen into the trap of kind of the same stuff over and over, and he's trying to push himself to do something different. We'll see if it sticks. My suspicion is it will kind of creep into old habits, but again, who knows? I'm only saying that based on what he's done in the past. This issue begins with basically a gunman dressed in Rorschach's costume, kind of running and getting shot and killed. He dies with an accomplice. The two shooters are at a political event that's going on. What's weird is that like these people get shot, but everybody seems very calm down on the stage. There's no like rushing around. But anyway, so then we segue into kind of what is going to be the meat of the story. So this detective has come up. There was hints that this detective was going to be Bruce Wayne. Maybe that's going to eventually happen, that this guy's going to be revealed as Bruce Wayne. It's possible. It doesn't seem like it fits to me, but who knows. But at any rate, they're going into this mystery of who was the shooter, what happened, how did somebody tip them off, and how was that? And anyway, we get into kind of you need to go investigate who are these people, why'd they go, why'd they try and assassinate this candidate who's running against Redford by the name of Turley, and what does this go? There's a brief reference in here to the Watchmen TV series, just the tiniest enough of one to indicate that it is set in that same universe, which is a little bit. The Watchmen TV show mostly was a sequel to the original Watchmen series, but there was a couple things in there. If you really squinted, it didn't make a lot. It didn't make sense in terms of the timeline. There was just some moving around. You had to be pretty anal retentive. Well, I don't know. It depends on your point of view. But this issue is definitely following up on that. It is establishing it's in that same universe. And Tom King has said he wants to create that kind of next big story. So we get to the autopsy, and we're looking at things. We're trying to figure out, who is this Rorschach character? We don't know who he is. He's not in the system, and we're looking at the prints. We know who the female accomplice was, but we don't know who he was. There's a little bit of a mystery. They found an old bullet hole. What happened there? And we're basically we're again. I said this is a mystery, a detective story. So we look at the bodies, we look at the costumes, we hear a little bit about the mask and where it was paid for, and we're kind of going. This book looks and feels like the 70s, the colors and kind of the style and the art. So it feels, actually, this book reminds me far more of True Detective than it does Watchmen, in the sense that there are Watchmen characters here, but it very much has a True Detective feel. I tell you that from the standpoint of, if you're trying to figure out, is this for me? Do I like it? The question is, do you like True Detective? If you do, this is probably, definitely for you. At any rate, as he's going to kind of look into things, we're looking at kind of the various pieces. He talks to the guard, and we get a little bit of the what happened when these guys came in. So there's a crank call come in. They think it's a crank call. The security goes to investigate. They're attacked by Rorschach. There's a bit of a gunfight in the hallway, and lots of people are shot. And basically, we're seeing a Rorschach that seems more, definitely not the character and behavior that we've seen in the past. So, at any rate, just as he's about to kind of murder the last surviving security guard, hears a gunshot in the distance. He realizes it's probably his partner. He runs up to go to save her. So this issue is told in a bit in flashback, trying to piece together both the mystery and piece together kind of what's going on. Anyway, so there's a lot of loyalty kind of threaded throughout this to Turley, the man who's running against Robert Redford, who's the president of the United States. And we kind of just piece through the different places. So one thing we get is we think that there's at least some message. We've got a little bit of a tape, and on it is a kind of what basically is a seance that is recorded that's going to the detective. And the seance introduces some names that are familiar. We get Earl Binder, we get Otto Binder, we get Frank Miller's name mentioned in this seance. There's a little bit of comic backstory here. Randy Cox is listed here, and then this fictional character is created for the comic called Will Myerson. And Will Myerson is we're trying to think, who is Will Myerson? And so as we get kind of through the comic, Will Myerson is a comic book artist. Did this Pontius Pirate, War of the West Indies, Pontius Pirate. What am I saying? At any rate, they kind of come to the conclusion that Will Myerson must be the Rorschach. They kind of ID him. They think that's who it is. They believe it's him. So he has no family, no license, no pictures. He was kind of a shut-in, popular comic artist, but then maybe got very bitter. Talked about being a fanatic. Wrote a bunch of liberal stuff. Everyone's a fascist, that kind of thing. kind of very like a crank. Old guy couldn't handle the fame, and just kind of a lot of stuff around here about, here is he was a popular artist in the 60s, kept drawing for himself after working for others, but then seemed to kind of lose his mind. Are you picking up a little thread here of who this might be? At any rate, then the big kind of twist or the piece at the end is that, in the original Watchmen, Walter Kovacs goes to Sing Sing, gives his print, but they managed to, get those, and the two sets match. So, the FBI says that, hey, this, William Myerson is the shooter, that it fits, basically from the tapes and from what we've heard. But the prints match Kovacs, which was, obviously he died in, back in the 80s. So this is 2020. So by the way, it is interesting. I mentioned before, it feels like it's set in the 70s. Stylistically, it does in terms of the art and the carpeting and kind of everything. It feels like a United States in the 70s. But it's, as we said here, the comic is clearly set in 2020. So which is it? Well, I mean, this is the Watchmen universe where the 70s have lived forever. It's interesting to see that dynamic of how that comes in and plays into that. So the comic ends at that point basically with, this is a serious campaign. We need to investigate this. We can't be floating around kind of crazy stuff. We've got prints that match Kovacs, but he's clearly dead. And we've got this, William Myerson, who seems to be ID'd and definitely connected to this whole piece. So which can it be? So, and that's where the issue ends, and, we're promised more to come. So a couple things. First off, as people talked about yesterday, this is a political comic, but it kind of should be. I mean, The Watchmen was a political series, sure, but in this sense, the politics are on the nose. It's a campaign, and there was an attempted assassination. There's a mystery around it. This is a mystery comic. This is a detective comic. This is not a political comic. Politics are in the background. Now, maybe the politics are going to come more into it. Undoubtedly, they will. But this is, at its heart, a detective comic. I almost feel like the comments that King made in the interview saying this is, a reflection of our current society and some of that stuff, I almost feel like that's more of a detriment than a positive. I think a lot of people do get the same reaction I did yesterday of saying, we don't need, we're filled up. We've got enough crazy here, so to speak. We don't need any more. And we really would like to just have a break from some of this stuff. And this comic is a break from that. It isn't what was kind of advertised to a sense. Now, again, I think the comic is going to go there in the issues to come. But at its heart, this kicks off as a straight up mystery. And I think to a lot of people, there's a relief in kind of reading it that way. Now, the other thing that's worth noting is that, as legend lore would have it, and there's a lot of debate about this, but Alan Moore made the original Rorschach Steve Ditko, basically as an amalgamation of Steve Ditko, and we need to do a video on Steve Ditko. It's weird. There's a couple people who in the comments have come in and said just really aggressively nasty things about Ditko, which I think is inappropriate, insane, toxic, if you will. And Ditko wasn't a very unique, very puzzling personality in a lot of cases. But it's weird to see the hate that is starting to seep out for that guy, which is disrespectful at best. But anyway, so as you're reading this and you're looking at Myerson, you're looking at the way he's described, it's hard not to at least come to some conclusion that Tom King isn't making Myerson and this character here Alan Moore. It feels like as much Alan Moore as the original Rorschach was Steve Ditko. Is that the case? I probably not. Who knows if that's ultimately where it goes? But there's at least enough there that it feels like Alan Moore. And we'll see how it all rolls out. It's way too early to start throwing that around and getting people all riled up. But it would be some pretty big balls if DC is publishing a Rorschach comic where they make the antagonist kind of a somewhat parallel or parody of Alan Moore. Given everything that has gone on, that's some balls on you. That's what you're doing. Again, it's too early to say that, but a bunch of people are speculating that is the case, and there's been some articles written, and maybe it's Alan Moore. I don't know. Maybe it's as much Alan Moore as the original one was Steve Ditko, which was a bit of a stretch, but there was some comments to that effect. So where does it all go? Anyway, this issue, it's not I want to say it's fun. Again, if you the best way to put it, I think, is if you like True Detective, you probably will enjoy this. There's a bit of a mystery there. It does kind of float by pretty quickly. This isn't going to be like the next legendary Watchmen series. It's not going to achieve those same heights. Tom King is saying this is one of the best things he's ever done. I hope, again, I hope for everybody's sake that's true and that it goes there. But it's too early to kind of throw that kind of stuff around. It's a mystery. It's a detective story. We'll see where it all goes. Does the hook of Kovacs and Myerson maybe being the same person or not being the same person, but why are the prints there? What does all that have to do with anything? Where does it all go? So we will see. At any rate, let me know what you think. If you're going to pick up this issue. Two, if you did, what you thought. And then, what you think of all these topics. Leave a comment below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. But most importantly, thanks for listening.